So I want to take a quick look, just recap of some of the shared core, and bring in a few more things that we haven't mentioned before, as far as things that are kind of shared in some form or another between all kind of branches of Buddhism, and a look at the way it's spread. And when we look at that spread, we'll see some divisions in types of Buddhism, but we'll go into those in another lecture. For now, we'll just kind of take them as they are. So what we're looking at is that after the Buddha died, hundreds of monks came together and finalized the teachings of the Buddha. These rules were called the Vinaya. They were passed down orally for 2 centuries. So we have no writings from he didn't write. The Buddha didn't write. He taught, and what he taught is passed down orally. He had monks that followed him and learned from him and then put into practice the things he was teaching. So those earliest ones are written down about 2 centuries after his death. Of course, we've talked about already that one of the shared things, and this is shared with Hinduism, but it's obviously adapted or more precisely focused, is the law of karma is central to Buddhism. Every cause has an effect. Actions have results, and we should focus our actions based on our intention, the effects of our action on ourselves, and the effects on others. This is what develops our karma. It's focused on the idea of personal responsibility, and personal responsibility is going to be a core of the Buddhist ideal from very early on. But karma and reincarnation are also used, as they are in Hinduism, to explain problems of rebirth, and this is going to expand out and lead to kind of some of the things that cause division in the schools. We'll talk about that shortly. Remember now the Four Noble Truths. No matter what type of Buddhist someone is, they all hold to the Four Noble Truths. It's the idea that life is suffering. Suffering is rooted in kind of misdirected desires, ambitions, and kind of hopes and dreams, things that are misdirected, things that are beyond your control, beyond your ability to direct and affect directly. So the goal is to escape suffering. The Buddha said, my teaching is about suffering and the way to overcome it, essentially. So how do you overcome suffering? Well, you get rid of the desire, because your suffering is rooted in your poorly directed desires, your desire for those things you can't control. So your disappointment leads to suffering, loss leads to suffering. If you didn't wrongly desire, you wouldn't have to suffer those things. So you want to overcome your desire. You do that through the method of the Eightfold Path. And this, again, is constant for all expressions of Buddhism. Buddhism spread from Bodh Gaya, right, is where the Buddha is centralized, is where he raises up his disciples. They're in the northeast of India, and it went out from there. You see these 2 major branches, Theravada and Mahayana. We'll see that the spread, where it spreads, how it spreads, is somewhat related to the type of Buddhism. The Mahayana is more open to accepting and kind of blending with the traditional religions of an area as it moves in to an area. So the basics of Buddhism are going to be really not widely accepted in India, but other areas that have Hindu type or Hindu rooted belief systems are going to embrace early on. It's in those other in China and Japan that we'll see these variations, and also in Tibet, and so we'll talk about those later. In the late 1800s, there was a mass immigration of Chinese Buddhists to the American West, and there's a backlash with discriminatory laws and practices. The only two, well, really the main groups that have had serious laws passed against them racially have been, well, religiously I should say, are Buddhists and then Mormons actually, but that doesn't relate here. Still, there's a massive immigration. There's reaction to that. There's also some embracing of Buddhism in the late 1800s through the Theosophical Society. Theosophy is like a blend of a sort of religious philosophy. They try to blend various religious systems and beliefs, and they were attracted to Buddhism in the late 19th century. A little later on, you see Buddhism move into the U.S. again after World War II, where Zen Buddhists make their way to the Americas. Zen is embraced by the beatnik culture and then later in pop culture. It's the kind of sense of intellectualism and kind of cultural foreignness that attracts this appeal of meditation, personal effort. Then we see kind of a next wave of Buddhist immigration from the 70s. We see Tibetan Buddhist presence because of persecution by China. 75, we see the post-Vietnam War surge. The South Vietnamese were fleeing to the U.S. And then after Cambodia, the Cambodians are fleeing from Pol Pot. And then finally, you have kind of a rise of celebrity Buddhism in the 90s, Richard Gere and people like that. Generally, Buddhist morality, this is across the board, no matter what school of Buddhism you embrace. There's an importance of actions, thought, words, deeds, the focus on moral purity, nonviolence and compassion. These are what drive kind of the general practice of all Buddhists. There is no main deity. There are bodhisattvas at various times. We'll talk about those later more, but who kind of take on a mediator role. But there's no one God really. There's a lot of different forms of meditation, altered states of consciousness. These are common to all schools of Buddhism. There's a monastic role in all schools of Buddhism. There are funeral rituals, not the same as you would find in like Christianity or Islam, but monks often do bestow blessings. They do visit the dying because the state of mind at dying influences your rebirth. Most of the funeral customs and observances are rooted in Indian Hindu custom that the Buddha came out of, right? He didn't change a lot of those basic customs for those kind of stages of life. There is a sort of reciprocal relationship between monks and laity. The lay people often provide for monks. The Theravadan temples have statues of the Buddha, serial paintings of his life, and altar and incense holders. The focus of Theravada is remembering the Buddha as a teacher. The Mahayana and Vajrayana temples are elaborately decorated, and really all Buddhist temples have areas for meditation. There are protective rituals in both forms of Buddhism. Recitation of scripture. Really, within Theravada, you're seeking to protect yourself. In Mahayana, there's more. There are mantras, there are doctrinal statements. There's also kind of a holding to. We'll talk about the bodhisattvas, and kind of asking for their aid.